20 years is long enough to be forgotten twice. Once by the war that took him, once by the sea that refused to bring him home. In Ithaca, the house of Odysseus stands where it always has, but it no longer belongs to the man whose name is carved into it. More than 100 men have made themselves at home within its halls. They feast on his cattle, they drink his wine, they court his wife, one after another, in full view of everyone, as though patience were the only law left standing. They call themselves suitors. In truth, they are an occupation. For years, Penelope has held them at bay with a single deception. A burial shroud she weaves by day and secretly unweaves by night, promising to choose a husband only when her work is complete. But the trick cannot last forever. It has been discovered. The weaving is over. Time has finally caught up with her. Telemachus, her son, is no longer the child his father left behind. He is old enough to see what Odysseus would see: a house being devoured from within, a mother running out of time, and a name once feared across Greece, now spoken in its own home like a fading rumor. No one in that hall expects Odysseus to return, not the suitors, not the servants who have chosen new masters, not even those who still whisper his name. This house has accepted a story that its king is dead. Before the house, there was the sea, and before the sea, there was a war that lasted 10 years and ended with a wooden horse no one thought to destroy. Odysseus should have been home within a month. Instead, it took him 10 more years. First came the island of the lotus eaters, where his men tasted a fruit that erased the desire to leave. They had to be dragged back to their ships, prisoners of their own forgetting. Then came the cave of the Cyclops, a one-eyed giant who asked for his name before devouring 2 of his men where they stood. Odysseus answered with a lie. Nobody. That lie bought him an escape, but when he revealed his true name in pride, the giant called upon his father, Poseidon, to curse the voyage home. From that moment on, the sea itself became his enemy. There was Circe, the witch who turned half his crew into swine. When that failed to break him, she became his ally, and, for a year, something resembling a wife he never intended to find. There was the journey into the land of the dead, where Odysseus sought the prophet Tiresias, hoping that only the dead could tell him how to reach the living. There were the sirens, whose song no sailor was meant to survive. Odysseus alone chose to hear it, bound tightly to his own mast, while his crew, their ears sealed with wax, ignored his desperate screams to set him free. Then came the narrow passage between 2 certainties of death: Scylla, the 6-headed monster waiting among the cliffs, and Charybdis, the whirlpool that swallowed the sea itself. There, Odysseus learned the cruelest lesson of command. Not everyone could be saved. When the last ship was finally destroyed, the blame belonged not to the sea, but to his own men, who slaughtered the sacred cattle of Helios, despite every warning. Zeus answered the sacrilege with a storm that shattered the vessel and drowned everyone aboard. Everyone except Odysseus. Alone, he drifted across the sea until he reached the island of the nymph Calypso, who offered him something no mortal had ever been promised: immortality. All he had to do was stay. He refused. 20 years after leaving Ithaca, the sea finally released him. He did not return as the triumphant hero who sailed away. He returned as a weathered stranger, carrying the weight of every mile it had taken to come home. Before Odysseus sets foot in Ithaca, a goddess changes his face. Athena strips away every trace of the warrior and every scar of the sea, leaving him with something far more powerful than strength: the appearance of a man no one would ever notice, a beggar. He does not go to his palace first. He goes to the hut of the swineherd Eumaeus. After 20 years away, loyalty is easier to find among swine than among kings. Eumaeus welcomes the stranger without question. He offers him food, a fire, and a place to rest. He curses the suitors who consume his master's wealth, never realizing that the man sitting across from him is Odysseus himself. Then Telemachus arrives. At Athena's command, the disguise falls away for just a moment. For the first time in 20 years, a son sees his father. There is no long embrace, no celebration, only recognition and a plan. Because in this house, grief must wait its turn behind strategy. Disguised once more, Odysseus walks into his own hall. He watches strangers feast at his table. He listens as they mock his name. He begs for scraps beneath the roof he built. One of the suitors, Antinous, hurls a stool at his head. Odysseus does nothing. 20 years of war, 10 years of wandering, all reduced to a single afternoon of perfect restraint. Then someone recognizes him. Not a servant, not his son, not even his wife. His old hunting dog, Argos, 19 years old, neglected, and lying on a heap of dung. The faithful hound lifts his head at the sound of his master's voice. His tail moves once, his ears fall back, and after waiting 20 years for the only man he ever served, Argos dies. No one notices. Not even Odysseus allows himself to mourn. Not yet. That night, Penelope speaks with the mysterious beggar. She tells him she will marry whichever suitor can string Odysseus's great bow and send an arrow cleanly through the sockets of 12 axe heads. It sounds like a contest. In truth, it is one last impossible delay. One by one, the suitors take the bow. Some strain, some fail before the string even begins to bend. None can draw it. Then the beggar asks for his turn. The hall erupts in laughter. They hand him the bow, expecting one final humiliation. Instead, Odysseus strings it in a single smooth motion. As effortlessly as a musician tuning a familiar instrument, silence falls over the hall. He knocks an arrow, draws the string, releases. The arrow passes cleanly through all 12 axe heads, and in that instant, the king of Ithaca returns. The doors are already barred before anyone understands why. Telemachus seals the hall from the inside. Eumaeus, the faithful swineherd, and Philoetius, the loyal cowherd, secure every escape the suitors never thought to watch. 20 years of waiting end the moment the final arrow finds its mark. Odysseus lowers the bow, then he casts aside the disguise. I am Odysseus. For a heartbeat, no one moves. Then panic takes the room. The suitors scramble for weapons that are no longer there. During the night, the armor and spears had been quietly removed from the hall. Their confidence had vanished before they even knew the battle had begun. Eurymachus steps forward. He offers silver, gold, 3 times the value of everything they have consumed. He blames the dead Antinous and begs Odysseus to spare the rest. There is no bargain to be made, not after years of theft, not after years of humiliation, not in his own home. The bow is the first weapon, the spear is the second. After that, anything within reach becomes an instrument of judgment. The feast dissolves into slaughter. The hall that had echoed with laughter now rings with the sound of men fighting for lives they never believed they would have to defend. When it is nearly over, Leodes, the suitor's diviner, falls to his knees. He insists, he warned the others, he begs for mercy. Odysseus does not grant it. To stand among the guilty for years is, in his eyes, to share their fate. Not everyone dies. Phemius, the bard who sang because he was compelled, is spared. So too is Medon, the faithful herald, whose life is saved when Telemachus speaks on his behalf. At last, silence. The floor of the great hall is no symbol. It is simply a floor, marked forever by the price of 20 years. Odysseus stands alone in the house he fought so long to reclaim, alive, victorious, 20 years too late. For the first time in a decade, Ithaca is quiet. He believes the story is over. It has only reached its final test. The suitors are dead. The hall is being cleaned. Odysseus orders the blood scrubbed from the floor. The tables are set upright. The bodies are carried away. A house trying to remember what peace looked like, as though order were something that could simply be restored. Then his attention turns to the women. 12 maidservants of the household had shared the suitors' beds during the long occupation. Homer condemns them alongside the suitors, though the poem never pauses to ask how much of what happened was choice, and how much of what happened was survival under men who held absolute power. Odysseus gives the order for their punishment. Telemachus carries it out. First, the women are made to drag the bodies of the dead from the hall. Then they scrub away the blood that stains the stone. Only when the work is finished are they led outside. Telemachus chooses not to kill them with the sword. Instead, a single rope is stretched between a pillar and the wall. Homer compares what follows to birds caught in a hunter's snare, or doves trapped in a net. The poem does not linger. It tells us only that their feet struggled for a little while, and then were still. The house falls silent once more. But one person has yet to believe the king has truly returned. Penelope. She has waited 20 years. She has survived by trusting no one. So she devises one final test. She calmly orders a servant to move her marriage bed. Odysseus explodes. The bed cannot be moved. He built it himself around the trunk of a living olive tree, its roots still buried deep in the earth. To move the bed would mean cutting down the tree itself. Only the man who built it could know that. Only then does Penelope believe. 20 years of separation, a reunion that Homer tells in only a few lines. The execution of the maidservants receives more attention. That is the ending many retellings leave behind. Not a simple tale of a hero reclaiming his throne, but a home scarred by 20 years of absence, vengeance, and irreversible loss. The Odyssey ends not with triumph, but with a question that has echoed for nearly 3,000 years. When a man finally returns home, how much of home is left to save?